this, our rate goes up.
Put these guys on trial?
What'd you tell him?
I told them nothing.
We're not untouchable, Leo. That's exactly what we are.
All right, Jeremy. So how's it going, man?
What's up, dude? How are you?
I'm good. I gotta tell you, I watched Mob Cops yesterday, man. You were awesome in this movie. You were like such a great character in this movie because I know it's based on a real person, but just the way you brought yourself, it's like you and David Arquette's characters were like night and day. Like you were the more outgoing one where he's trying to keep everything like quiet, but you did such a great job in that role, man.
Thank you, Albert. I appreciate that, buddy.
So my first question is, what inspired you to take on this role?
You know, I did a movie with Danny Abeckaser called Inside Man a couple of years ago that starred Emile Hirsch, and I was in that film. And I was in Montreal in the beginning of 2023, and I was doing a television show called Ghosts, and I had a lot of time off. And the writer from Inside Man, Costa, messaged me, and he's like, Jeremy, hey, it's Costa. Do you want to get something to eat? I'm like, yes. I want to meet people. I want to see people. I'm here by myself. I was there for a couple of weeks, and I had a lot of time off. And so we went out to dinner, and he's like, hey, I'm writing this movie for Danny about these corrupt cops, the most true story about these corrupt cops from the NYPD. And I was like, I heard this story. I knew this. So I was like, wow, this is really fascinating. So I was like, can you send me the script? So he sent me the script that night. I read it really fast, and I was like, this character of Leo Bendetti is really, really wild. And it actually, and there was a couple of characters that I thought were really cool. But it was just very intriguing of somebody who's living a life, you know, he's a husband, a gangster, a cop, and also an actor. And I read it, and I convinced Danny to let me, the director, to let me make a self-tape for it. And he said, you know, you're not right physically, and I already have somebody else in mind. But I sent the self-tape to him, and he really liked what I did in the tape. And this other actor had to drop out of the film a month before the shoot. So that's how I wound up playing the role.
Well, thank God, because you totally nailed it with this movie, hands down. I mean, especially your chemistry with David Arquette, you know, and because you guys were the heart of the film in a way. But I like the fact that his character was trying to be more like on the ground, like ground level, like not really thinking about it too much. Where your character, you just rolled with it, and
he got cocky. He got very, very cavalier, and the way he got caught, for the audience that doesn't know, he was on this show called the Sally Jesse Raphael Show. For people that don't know, Sally was up there with Oprah in the 80s and 90s as far as talk show hosts go. And he was on the show, and this woman was watching the show, and she was, her son was missing for a couple of years at that point. She was like, that's the guy who took her son, and I never saw my son again. And he was on the show talking about how he was a cop, and how his family was in the Mafia and all this stuff. And that was his demise, because he wanted to be famous.
Yeah, and I like the fact that Danny himself played the cop who ends up busting you guys, and I like that it's told in flashbacks in a way, because you get to learn the whole story about it. But the way Danny comes off as, Tim, he does it so straight laced, and he's like the Elliot Ness to your Al Capone, basically. That's how I pretty much saw it. Like, you were Al Capone and he was Elliot Ness. Like, he's ready to just take you down. And I felt like the whole film had this Martin Scorsese vibe to it, because if Martin Scorsese had done this movie, it would have been a 3-hour like movie. And I like the fact that Danny cut it down to an hour and a half, and I felt like it was a mini Scorsese movie, but it was so good in terms of the tone of the film.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, we were all, I mean, who's not inspired by Martin Scorsese? Especially like men that are involved, and we were all in Scorsese. I mean, half the cast was in the Scorsese. We're in Scorsese films, so we were very, very inspired by Scorsese. I think Danny is very inspired by Scorsese, and he did a great job as Tim Delgado. That's based on a real person too. Actually, that was a good cop.
Yeah, and although the movie was supposed to be more serious, there was one part I couldn't stop laughing at. Like it was when you and Sammy decide you want in on the action, and of course you're telling like the gangster, and he tells you to go F your mother. And then when someone else butts in, he goes, "Why don't you F your mother?" I was like, this guy Joe Pesci could have played this character perfectly. It was like Joe Pesci was like amped up to 15. That scene actually made me chuckle the whole
Yeah,
time.
Joey Russo, he's a friend of mine. Uh, yeah, he was great. He played Galliano, who the cops are working for, a mobster who the cops who was, he was a sociopath. But he played that character. But yeah, it was really funny. I remember that. I remember
Yeah.
that.
Like I was like I'm surprised like I was looking at it, I was surprised like no one broke during this scene. If they did, it was just too funny. That was like
What's funny about that? You said he played. He kind of reminded you of Joe Pesci when Joey Russo, the actor, when he was younger, like 10 years ago, he played Joe Pesci in Jersey Boys.
I knew it. That's where I found. Thank you for that because I realized like wait a minute. That's now that you mention it. That's like now I see that I'm like holy crap. Like you're totally. I was like wow. No wonder why it would have
Yeah,
fit perfectly. That's awesome. That's
kind of a wild story, right? Yeah,
yeah.
it's funny because Joe Pesci put the Four Seasons together. He was like the guy who put them together when he was a teenager.
Yeah. But yeah, overall, man, this was a great movie. And like I said, just the way you came off as, Leo, like, when you got the role, did you actually study like the actual character, knowing that you knew what the case was, but did you actually get more of an understanding of that role?
Yeah, I read. He wrote a book. This guy, I mean, he was really cavalier. He wrote a book about being a good cop who was involved in before he got caught, who was involved in the mafia. So right away, I got that book to kind of understand and who he was and how his outlook on himself. And then there was there was stuff. There was documentaries. He was in Goodfellas. Speaking of Martin Scorsese, he was in Goodfellas. He played Fat Andy. So I don't know if you know in Goodfellas when they're
Yeah.
going through our restaurant,
Mhm.
and they're introducing themselves. There's Jimmy two times, and then he goes, and that's Fat Andy. And he goes, "How you doing?" That's him.
Oh,
So
wow. Okay.
most people know who he is
Mhm.
as far as an actor goes. But yeah, and then a couple of months ago, David's sister, Patricia Arquette. After David Fincher died, I was watching this movie called what the hell's it? Lost Highway,
Yeah.
and this guy, the real guy, was in scenes with Patricia Arquette in Lost Highway, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is just." I didn't know that, but
That
it was.
is now that you mentioned that, I gotta look that now. I gotta look for that. I gotta check that out again.
I was like, "Ooh, wow."
That's awesome. So what's next for you after this? Now that Mob Cops is coming out Friday, what's next for you that you can talk
I
about?
just did a proof of concept for Angel Studios, about this faith-based singer called, his name was Carmen, who was an Italian American singer out of Jersey. He was huge in the 80s and 90s, and I played his brother, who was a cop, a good cop, and I was in charge of his security. But he was really, really big, and it looks like that's going to wind up becoming a feature film that I'm going to be a part of.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, everyone, check out Mob Cops this Friday. It is a great true story. Jeremy nails it here as Leo Bendetti. David Arquette even pulls off an amazing performance as his partner. And altogether, if you like Martin Scorsese films, you're definitely going to want to see this one because this definitely had the tone of a Scorsese film. And Jeremy, man, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about it.
Appreciate you, Albert. Tag me in all your stuff. That's my social media, Jeremy Luke 323, and I'm all over. I'll see you out there. But we really appreciate it.
All right, man. Well, you take care and stay awesome.
All right, buddy. Take care.
All right.